the College Ready Promise is a coalition of 5 charter schools, 5 of the largest ones in California, some of the most successful ones, Aspire, Alliance, Green Dot, ISEF, and PUC. And together they operate over 90 schools and educate over 30,000 students. So together they make up a very sizable organization. So what is our mission? We really, and this aligns very well with the mission of all 5 of our charter management organizations, and is to improve the college readiness of their students. And we want to do that through the development of teacher development systems and the development of our teachers and support of our teachers. Because as has been said several times here today already, we know the teachers are the most important factor in the classroom. So we want to do that in essentially 4 ways. First, I'm echoing a little bit of Drew's work as well, that we want to provide teachers with multiple measures of their effectiveness. We want to align supports with those multiple measures of effectiveness so that we are not providing kind of the stock professional development, so that support is actually aligned to what we see on evaluations. That leading to enhanced compensation and career opportunities, so that currently we talk about it in terms of differentiated compensation. We have differentiated compensation already. It just happens to be based on seniority and a couple of other factors. We would like to change that, so the compensation system is based on the effectiveness of the teacher in the classroom. Also provide an opportunity for teachers to advance in their careers and still stay in the classroom. I think too often teachers find that they must leave the classroom to be able to advance in careers. We want to make sure that's not the case. And then supporting principals to be the best leaders that they can of their schools, because we all know that to truly implement this work at the school site level, you have to have school leaders who can perform the work and support the teachers. We are part of a Gates Foundation grant. There are 4 sites there. They've called them their intensive partnership sites around the country. You see the other three places where they're doing this work right now. The key difference is that those 3, they're working with those school districts to implement these teacher development systems and teacher effectiveness work. We're the only one of the 4 that are working with charter schools. So it provides a different perspective when we are all able to get together and talk about our challenges in implementation and development. We've all started right around the same time. We got our grant in late 2009 in November. So we spent the last roughly year and a half so far on this work, and I'll talk a little bit about where we are at this point. So I think it bears saying, first of all, that our goal in this, the grant covers 7 years, and we plan on taking all of it to make sure we get it right. We want to be extremely deliberate in the work we're doing. We don't want to roll this out in a broad fashion and then have to keep coming back and fixing it after we've already made decisions on compensation and career path for teachers, and then have to go back and try to fix it. So we're being very deliberate about the work that we're doing. And there's a couple of things on this page I'd like to make sure I point out, because I think they'll come back a little bit later in the presentation. One, we've had a really great partnership with LAUSD, and one of the big things that we were able to accomplish with them that's going to help us in our work is getting a memorandum of understanding with LAUSD that allows us to have access and share all the student data from LAUSD and our charter management organizations in kind of true form. We don't have the data. Someone else holds the data, and then they give us access to the results of the data. We're not quite at that big trusting part of the relationship yet. But it's about, it's 95% better than it was before. So we're extremely happy about that. And I'll tell you why that's so important in a few minutes. And each one of our 5 charter management organizations involved in this effort has formed a teacher advisory panel. Some of them, they have 1 teacher from every school. Some of them have selected them a little bit differently, but they are a key part of our development process. Cherie's going to talk much more about that than I am, but it's an extremely teacher-driven, inclusive process, because we know you can't develop one of these kinds of systems without having thoughtful and frequent teacher input into whether or not something is going to work and actually help in developing teacher practice. These are in terms of teacher observation and evaluation, this is kind of where we are right now, big picture wise. We also partnered with Teaching and Learning Solutions to help put together our observation rubric. It's based on the Danielson model, all that kind of fun stuff. We've approved the use of student growth percentiles as our methodology for measuring student growth. That's a little bit different than what the district is doing with AGT, and I'll talk just a little bit about kind of the differences between student growth percentiles and AGT. Not to say ours is better, but ours is better. And just kidding. And we've started on the establishment of an observational cycle, so that and lots and lots and lots of training of our observers and our teachers on how this is going to work. We're still in the process of creating our teacher supports. And when I go through the timeline a little bit about implementation, you'll see that we are not fully baked on teacher supports because it's in our piloting. We are in our pilot phase right now this spring. We have some of our schools and some of our teachers who are starting to pilot the observation and the student growth data part of this. And then we're going to be aligning our teacher supports to that. We got $11 million of TIF fund to help with our performance compensation model. And the pilots have begun, and we'll start getting results from that, after this school year ends. And then our plan is to next fall roll out what we're calling our first full year pilot. And like LAUSD, we're going to go slow in starting before we actually start applying some of this to teacher compensation or teacher career path. We want to get a lot of good feedback and a lot of good data from this work before we actually start, before it actually has an impact on teacher compensation and career path. So what is the teacher development system? It's essentially what I've been describing. It's you start with robust, reliable measures of effectiveness. They lead into targeted and practical supports for teachers. A lot of them, depending on where they are in their own development process, can leverage things that they're already doing. So what it made sense for us to do was actually kind of provide a kind of an overarching framework, and then all 5 CMOs will implement things a little bit differently. So what I'm showing you here is this is kind of the framework that they've all agreed to, generally speaking, for what a teacher's score, what's it going to look like when they get their score. 60% is going to be based on the observation and the student and family feedback through surveys. And some of them will also do some peer feedback that'll go into that. And then on the achievement side or the growth side, 40% total. 20% might be individual student growth with 10% grade level, 10% school level. Might look a little bit different. Each CMO is going to do a little bit differently. What I think that's a strength for us, and I think that we'll be able to report out to the field a lot of different ways of implementing this. So it's not one size fits all. We're not saying here's how you have to do it. It's here's how you might want to do it based on what you have in your organization and what's available to you. And so the observation side of this is, here's the teaching framework. I think a lot of you who are in education are already somewhat familiar with these domains. They're a little bit different. I think most of them kind of have 4 standard domains. We've made it 6 by including, kind of the community, the work that's within the community. So a lot of this, you kind of saw with LAUSD. We've included it in this domain or in this rubric. And so, this will, a teacher's observation will, generate a number, a score that comes out of this as part of that 60% that you saw. And then, a little bit of discussion on student growth percentiles on the measure that we came up with with the help of a lot of other smart people to decide on how do we want to measure the academic growth of our students such that it reflects the work of the teacher in the classroom. So. Ours, and this is where the MOU with LAUSD comes in. It was a huge factor for us because now we're doing kind of the same thing where you take, a student X, and all the other students that start at that same academic point, and then you measure. Where do they go from one year to the next? And then and as you get over time, it's not only from one year to the next, but it's along that continuum. And then you put them in rank order of percentiles. So there's an example at the end. I'll let you guys read that. But it's basically communicating student growth in a percentile format rather than a standard deviation format. So that MOU allows us, though, to have all those, not just our 5 CMOs having starting points with all those students, but all the way across LAUSD. So we get to have a really robust comparison of how our students are growing along with LAUSD's. And Drew and I have been working together for a while now on a lot of this stuff, and we're really excited about how that creates opportunities for both of us to talk about this work. There's a couple of key differences between SGP and AGT. The percentiles versus standard deviation units is one. Just from a communication to teachers perspective, it's a little bit easier to talk about percentiles than it is to talk about standard deviation. I actually am one of those strange communications people that actually took a graduate level stats course, and I still don't ever want to talk about standard deviation. So percentiles makes that a lot easier. And then one other kind of key difference between what the district is doing and what we're doing is the district is controlling for some demographic variables and other things. We chose not to do that for a couple of reasons. Our CMOs have a very strong cultural aversion to doing anything that would at least even appear to be setting different expectations for different students based on anything besides their abilities in the classroom. So we didn't want to give that impression, and there's also significant differences in the literature about whether or not some of the demographic data really is predictive based on two students starting from the same academic point. So we chose not to include those, and if you know anything about our schools, the makeup of our schools is 90% African American, Hispanic, 90% Title I. So we don't think there's going to be, it really would have made that much of a difference, if at all, in using control variables or not. I'm going to breeze through this one really fast because it's a ton of text, and it's just, and if you want to look it up later, this kind of talks about, sort of our timeline, very general timeline. All the CMOs are going to be doing a little bit of different implementation along this timeline. Right now, none of the CMOs plan on actually using the data for compensation work until there's been at least 2 full years of measurement. And then accessing supports, and then, so you see like by 2013, 2014, you start seeing kind of, okay, my compensation changes and I'm on a career path for X because of the work I've been doing. So we have a lot of work to do in there, and a lot of that includes figuring out what we're going to do on non-tested subjects and all of that kind of fun stuff that I know LAUSD is still working on. A lot of people are still working on that. We're not there yet either, but it's part of our kind of deliberate approach to being able to do this. And then here's like just one that's going to make your eyes probably burn by looking at it, but again, it's one you can look up. But it talks, if we're successful, wow, what do we look like? We have school leaders who are effective instructional leaders and who can evaluate staff, and we have robust data that really tells us how we're doing, and kind of integrates all of the student data and the observational practice, and we're really using it to give teachers the regular feedback they need and the support they need to become great teachers. And so at the end of the day, all of our students have access to an excellent education, and they're all college ready. They're not having to go and take remedial courses. Our schools already have 75% of their kids graduate and go on to college, but it's still a high percentage of them are going and taking remedial courses. So we're getting them graduated, we're getting them qualified.
Part of our work is that we meet once a month-ish. We go and meet one teacher from each school, from each region. So we have a Valley cluster that gets together, Bay Area cluster that gets together, and then a cluster down in Southern California that gets together. And what we look at is just the things that are coming up in the work that they're doing with the College Ready Promise. So some of the things we've looked at is the rubric, very with the domains, and very similar to what LAUSD is doing. And they get our feedback on that. How do you think the teachers are going to perceive this rubric? What do you think some miscommunications might be? How can we make this better? The teacher supports, the SGP model, we've looked at that. Did we want to do the value-added model? Did we want to do the student growth percentiles? And they got our feedback on that. What what's the benefits of this, and are we going to want to continue with, which one do we want to continue with? Part of my job also as being advisory panelist is to take this work back to my school site and talk to the teachers in informal conversations and ask them what they think, and then bring that information back to the meetings that I'm going to. And then we want to make sure that the teachers' voices are heard. So I want to make sure, I'm really excited about being part of this panel. I was telling Chris, I talk about it, I was at my birthday dinner, and hey, it just comes up. And we just start talking about this work and how excited we are to be part of this, and hoping that this is going to be, changing education in California. So these are some of the things that I hope that we accomplish by doing this work. Last time we met on Monday, for example, they brought to us this website. So we looked at this website, and it showed us how the teachers' scores are going to be looked at, and how you can go to this website and go to each score and understand why you were given that score. So looking at the rubric, this is why you got a 3. And if you're at a 3, this is what you can do to become a 4. And there's hot links on that page too. So then there's going to be like these discussion pages. And if that's my goal, so again, it's helping us set our goals. So I can go on to that website and I can upload materials that I've used to help me get to this goal. And then other teachers can go there also and see, oh, this really, really worked for her, or this didn't work for her. And then they can go and take that and say, hey, I tried this, and I tried this instead of that, and this really worked better, so you should try this. So it's going to be like a place where we can go for resources to help each other out, to share information. I hope that this brings an acknowledgement to the work that we're doing, and it changes school systems across the country to better education as a whole. And one of the things that we did very early on was that all the teachers met, and we created very clear stepping stones to what does a first-year teacher look like? What do we want them to just focus on that first year of teaching? When you've been working as a teacher for 5 years, what is that going to look like? And what are the supports we can give them in that area? So we want to help teachers to set those clear goals and give them the support that they need.